Ever wonder what makes us tick? Why some folks jump out of planes for fun, while others would rather curl up with a good book.
It's that age-old question, isn't it? What shapes us into the unique individuals we become?
Exactly. And that's what we're diving deep into today, the fascinating world of personality and development theories. We've got some really intriguing excerpts from a text by Godi Kim, like it's packed with insights.
It really offers a fresh perspective on this universal topic.
Absolutely. So get ready for a crash course on those big names. Freud, Adler, Erikson, the ones who tried to map out the human psyche. We're going to explore how their ideas can actually reveal things about ourselves and, let's be honest, everyone we know.
It's like holding up a mirror to human nature, trying to decipher those intricate patterns that make each of us tick.
Okay, so let's kick things off with Alfred Adler. I bet you've heard that name before.
Oh, absolutely. A pioneer in understanding those early experiences that shape who we are.
About that feeling of, wanting to prove yourself, whether it's at work, in relationships, maybe even just in our hobbies.
Exactly. And Adler would say that desire, that drive, it's actually rooted in our innate need to overcome feelings of inferiority, something we all experience early on. He was convinced those early interactions, especially within our families, play a massive role in how we strive for competence, that need for recognition.
It's like that classic sibling rivalry thing, right? Always trying to measure up, find your place.
The text uses this really great example. It talks about how a child might try to compensate for feelings of inadequacy, not by becoming more assertive, but actually by seeking out social connections.
Interesting. So it's like they're trying to overcompensate in a way.
Exactly. And it highlights this fascinating dance between our individual drive, that inner push, and the influence of everyone around us.
So we've got Adler focusing on these universal stages of development, but then we have Gordon Allport, who takes a totally different approach.
Yeah.
He was fascinated by those unique traits that make each of us tick.
He was all about individuality. It's like those personality quizzes we all secretly love, right? But Allport took it to a whole other level.
Much more academic, for sure. So instead of focusing on these broad stages, he was interested in the specific characteristics that make you, you, and me, me.
And get this, he actually tried to categorize personalities based on physical traits. He used terms like predominant, inferior, and central to describe how certain physical attributes might influence behavior.
Okay, hold on. So predominant traits would be those that really stand out.
Yeah.
Like maybe some outgoing or always the life of the party.
Exactly. And then inferior traits, those were seen as less desirable, even linked to perceived weaknesses. It's pretty outdated, to be honest.
I can see how that could be problematic.
Definitely raises all sorts of questions about societal standards and how we judge others based solely on appearance. While this is supported by research today, it's still super interesting to think about. Like, how much does our environment actually shape our self-perception? It's something to ponder.
It really makes you think twice about those snap judgments we all make,
Yeah.
even subconsciously. Okay, so we talked about Adler and Allport, but we can't have a deep dive into personality. We can't have a deep dive into personality without bringing up the one and only Sigmund Freud. Freud.
Yeah.
The guy who made the unconscious, conscious.
He really delved into that hidden world, didn't he? Argued that our personalities are shaped by these unseen forces, these primal urges, and those early formative experiences.
Talk about Freudian slips and try to analyze our dreams.
Right. And while some of his theories might seem a bit, outdated today, his work was undeniably groundbreaking. He explored how those early relationships, those first experiences of love and loss, and, everything in between, could leave a lasting impact on us.
Totally. He gave us a whole new language to talk about our inner world, right? The id, the ego, the superego.
And who could forget those psychosexual stages? They become part of our cultural lexicon.
Even if we don't necessarily subscribe to them literally.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The text points out how those stages, especially the oral and anal stages, can potentially lead to certain fixations if those early needs and conflicts aren't fully resolved. Of course, not everyone who bites their nails was deprived during, the oral stage.
Right.
But it is interesting to consider how those early patterns, like seeking comfort or maybe asserting control, how those things might pop up again and again throughout life.
It's like those early experiences create the blueprint, and then we just keep building on top of it.
Precisely. And to understand how that building process unfolds, how we grow and change across our entire lifespan, we have to bring in someone like Erik Erikson.
Okay, so how does Erikson fit into all of this?
Well, unlike Freud, who really honed in on those early roadmap for development that spans from infancy all the way to old age.
He's the one with those psychosocial stages, right? Those challenges we face at different points in our lives.
And that's the one. And what's really insightful about Erickson's work is that he emphasizes those social influences, but not just in childhood. He's talking about how those relationships, those cultural expectations continue to shape us throughout our entire lives.
So it's not just about our childhoods.
Not at all. Each stage, from those early struggles with trust and autonomy to figuring out intimacy and then generativity later on, each stage presents a unique challenge. It's like we're at a crossroads, grappling with these fundamental questions of our place in the world.
And how we navigate those challenges, those crossroads, ultimately shapes who we become, not just as individuals, but also as members of a larger community, right?
Exactly. And speaking of navigating that social world, our source material also dives into the work of Lawrence Kohlberg and his stages of moral development. This is where things get really interesting.
Okay, so Kohlberg, he was all about how we develop our sense of right and wrong. Right.
Precisely. He was fascinated by how we make moral judgments, how we decide what's right, what's wrong, and how those decisions evolve as we mature. He argued that it's not something we're just born with, hardwired.
So where does it come from then?
It's cultivated, shaped by those experiences, by our interactions with others, and really importantly, those cultural norms that surround us. Kohlberg gave us this framework for understanding the different levels of moral reasoning we go through.
So like from those early stages where it's all about avoiding punishment.
Exactly. To those more motivated by these universal principles of justice and fairness and a sense of what's ethically right, even if it goes against societal expectations.
Oh, that's a good point. It's not always easy to stand up for what you believe in, especially when it goes against the grain.
It's a process, and our cultural background plays a huge role in that developmental journey. The text actually higher cultures might emphasize different values, which then influences how we reason about what's right and what's wrong, what's acceptable behavior, what's not.
That makes a lot of sense when you think about it.
It's a good reminder that even something as personal and deeply held as our sense of morality is still influenced by the world around us.
Fascinating stuff. So we've covered Adler, Freud, Erikson, even Kohlberg, and the development of morality. We've gone from childhood to, well, pretty much the end of life.
Quite a journey. And yet we still haven't touched on one crucial aspect, that innate human desire for self-improvement.
That's a big one, for sure. That drive to be better, to become the best version of ourselves. Is that in our source material too?
It is, and it's such a natural progression, isn't it? I mean, once we start understanding all those forces that shape us, those early experiences, those social influences, those moral dilemmas, it's only natural to want to grab the reins and steer our own course.
I love that analogy, steering our own course. So how do we do that? Where do we even begin? So much to think about. We've covered a ton of ground in this deep dive, everything from those early childhood experiences that shape our personalities to the complex development of our moral compass.
It's like we've assembled this incredible toolkit, a set of lenses we can use to view ourselves and others with a deep...
Best part, there's no one right answer, no single theory that explains everything about human nature.
It's way too nuanced for that, way too fascinating. It's more about recognizing the interplay of all these factors, biology, our social world, those unique experiences we all have. They all contribute to who we become.
Right. It's like that classic nature versus nurture debate, except we're not looking for a simple answer anymore.
It's about embracing the complexity. And as we delve deeper into these theories, these different perspectives on personality and development, we inevitably bump into those thought-provoking questions, the ones that really challenge our assumptions about, well, what it means to be human.
Okay, give me an example. What kind of questions are we talking about?
Well, we touched on it earlier, the idea of whether our personalities are fixed or if they're constantly evolving. It's a big one.
It is a big one. Because on the one hand, we talk about personality traits as if they're these stable, enduring characteristics. But then again, we all know we're not the same person we were 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
Exactly. And that's where it gets really interesting because it suggests we have more agency than we might realize. We're not just these finished products shaped solely by our past or our genes.
So there's hope for us yet.
Oh, absolutely. We have this growth, for change, for shaping our own narratives, writing our own stories.
I love that. It's empowering, to
Yeah,
think that we're not just passengers on this crazy ride of life. We're active participants, making choices every step of the way that influence who we become.
precisely. And that brings us to you, our listener. As you've been on this deep dive with us, these different theories, has anything resonated with you personally?
Maybe you see yourself in Adler's striving for superiority, that drive to achieve, to overcome those challenges life throws your way.
Or maybe you identify more with Allport's emphasis on individual traits, those unique qualities that make you, well, you.
Find yourself drawn to the complexities of Freud's unconscious. Recognizing those subtle ways, those early relationships, continue to influence us even today.
The point is, there's no right or wrong answer here.
It's about that journey of self-discovery, asking those big questions, the ones that really make us think about who we are, what motivates us, what truly matters.
And remember,
Motivates us, what truly matters.
those answers might change over time. We might find ourselves reevaluating, shifting perspectives, and that's okay.
It's all part of the process.
Exactly. As we grow, as we learn, as we encounter new experiences, our understanding of ourselves naturally evolves.
It's like we're peeling back layers, uncovering facets of ourselves. It's what makes being human so incredibly fascinating.
It really is. And who knows, maybe by understanding ourselves a little bit better, we can actually create a world where everyone feels seen, understood, accepted for who they truly are.
What a beautiful thought. Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of personality and development, what if the most important discovery isn't about finding that one perfect theory or putting a neat little label on who we are?
What if it's about embracing this constant state of becoming?
I love that. Embracing the journey. Keep exploring. Keep asking those big questions. And until next time, happy diving.